Ryan. You should be able to find that in there. Did we have a message center number on that, Don?
A second. The Adobe one.
We should.
Oh, hang on. Where did I put it? Hang on, guys.
I know, I was looking, I think in the quick mention, so we should have.
Yes, MC512918.
All right, sounds great.
Great.
All right, thanks, Don, for the updates. We'll go ahead and slice the video and make sure that that gets out on YouTube so you can come back, take a look at these slides a little bit deeper, go into your message center, look up the numbers. If you have more questions on that, that should give you a lot of information. We just highlight those, but of course, the message center definitely talks more about it, what you need to do, how do you prepare your organization for that type of change when things are turned on by default or turned off by default. In the case of communicating to a team owner about upgrading the DL, that is in the team's admin center. I posted it in chat, meaning that as an admin, you can reach out to those individuals, but it's not an on or off type of feature. It's there if you want to use it. If you don't, then you don't have to. So that is admin specific. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Just a couple other announcements before we get into our sponsor and then our topics for the day. So like we've been doing throughout the pandemic, we not only want to give back to you as the M365 community here in Minnesota, and of course now virtual, reaching out beyond Minnesota, but we also want to give back to our local community and our local community charities. So we've been doing this, almost from a few months into the pandemic. We have now raised over $6,000 in local charity. Every single month we give it $200, and this is either on behalf of our user group or the sponsors help supply us with that money so we can give back to the community. This month is cancer, breast cancer, Susan G. Komen awareness, and we want to bring that to your attention. For everyone out there, please go get your mammograms. It's near and dear to my heart. It's really important that you go and get checked. We are giving $200 to help with the awareness, help with the education that's really needed inside of this different charity. Then I want to go ahead and announce we've got a speaker for Concurrency. Thank you so much for sponsoring us. We could not donate to our charities nor provide incredible gifts like 2 Amazon gift cards will be given away at the end of this event for $100 each. Some of you do work in the government sector and you cannot receive gifts. With that, we say, okay, but you still win, and what you get is the ability to say your charity of choice. We have a list of charities you can choose from, and on behalf of you, we will donate that in your name. So please stick around, fill out the surveys, let us know how we're doing. We really are here to support our community here and give you hopefully as much resources as we possibly can. So we do have, Michael is going to be talking about Concurrency and their services here in Minnesota. And then it will be followed by Liz and Chris, all the great things that are coming in Microsoft Viva, as well as building a business case for Defender. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and throw it over to Michael. Michael, are you out there from Concurrency?
Yeah, I am. Can you hear me okay?
Sure can, yeah. Okay,
perfect. I'm going to steal the screen share for about 5-7 minutes, if that's okay.
That sounds great.
All right, so just to get us kicked off here, I'm Michael Bergering. I'm an account executive on the Concurrency team. I'm here to kind of give you a high-level overview of Concurrency, share who we are, how we are helping our customers transform and leverage their technology. And just to kind of get us started, I'm going to talk about a little bit of the history. We've been around for 30 years as a Microsoft solution integrator. As you can kind of see in the story here, the first 20 years were really figuring out where our strengths are, doubling down on that. And then, after 2013, we kind of opened up branches in 3 different areas. And those are Chicago, Brookfield, Minneapolis. I'm local to Chanhassen, Minnesota. We've got a great team in each of those areas locally. And happy to help out. And we also help nationally too, though. So A little bit about some of those customers who we partner with. These are just some of those big names where, we took that journey with them over the years, right? And went from kind of just being that solution provider to really becoming that trusted advisor for these companies and helping transform their technology. So we're always happy to give out those references. We've got a section on our website to talk about some of these success stories as well. I'll be sharing a link about that later. But here's just some of those names that we've helped. Some rewards and recognitions to kind of highlight here. I'll talk about the top left one first. So we were global finalists in 2 areas, one being machine learning and the other in diversity and inclusion changemaker award. That's kind of cool because it's a global award. We were one of the 3 finalists, but we also had the good fortune of winning the U.S. Partner Award within the manufacturing vertical space, as well as AI and machine learning within Azure. Due to this, we found an increased number of manufacturing IP solutions that we've created and transferred nicely into not only that manufacturing vertical, but we work with a lot of FinServe, retail, and the consumer packaged goods industry that deal with a lot of the similar business problems that we're solving, like supply chain optimization, predictive maintenance, M&As, allowing acquisitions and divestitures to kind of seamlessly integrate their technology and allow businesses to get more work done efficiently. Let's see what else we got here. So I'm just going to spend 3 minutes on this slide. I know our main audience here is M365 and modern workplace, but I would like to talk about all those 4 solution areas that we help in. So when you think in terms of how Concurrency helps clients leverage their technology to drive those business outcomes, there's really those 4 main solution areas that are listed on the right there. But they really fall into those 2 main domain areas, which are marketplace disruption and IT operations. So when you think in terms of IT operations, it really is about helping our clients drive those efficiencies inside their business to remove a lot of those manual processes, convert them into an automated fashion, also enabling those business users to be able to work from anywhere on any device and to be able to do that in a very secure way. On top of that, being able to strengthen and streamline the business's overall security posture. We'll definitely talk about Zero Trust today. So when looking at those 2 solution areas within IT operations, secure modern workplace is obviously a big one, right? That's why we're here. We're helping businesses maximize the value of M365, SharePoint, Teams as a platform, helping businesses move towards that modern device management with Intune Autopilot, capitalizing on those E5 security stack of solutions, and again, a big focus around that Zero Trust security architecture. And then when you look at cloud transformation, it's all about meeting the clients where they're at within their cloud journey. Generally, we start by making sure they understand what the true cost of ownership is going to be, to help them build out that Azure migration plan. Then we work to establish that landing zone, make sure they have secure governance and guardrails, that those are in place, making sure that those workloads are going to be secure moving into Azure. But also for those clients that are already in Azure, which I'm sure is a lot of you out there, we want to assist where we can kind of operationalize that environment, everything from Azure DevOps, Azure Arc, even leveraging Azure Sentinel. The Power Platform is another spotlight, especially within the Center of Excellence. It's a large area of focuses for a lot of businesses out there, and we do help with those too. So moving up, when you think in terms of, sorry, I have some notes here. Okay, when you think in terms of marketplace disruption, this is truly where the transformation happens. This is where we're helping our clients in 2 major ways. And a lot of times it's just creating those new rev streams to disrupt the way that they're working with their customers or partners, disrupting the way that they're actually running their businesses and helping them drive savings in the way that they're working with or organizing their warehouse specifically. Again, I talked about supply chain. We work with optimizing that process and really focusing on those things that can help provide those meaningful results within their business. Of course, we do that through leveraging data and AI to better provide better insights on how to deliver those operational savings by leveraging the modern data framework and a lot of other Azure services, as well as leveraging Power BI for those visualizations that take place. And then applications and products, that's all about transforming the way that we're interacting with our customers and partners, everything from application development to new interfaces to even leveraging dynamic CRM and ServiceNow. So that's kind of summary. That's a summary of how we help our partners achieve those successful business outcomes. to leverage through their technology. This is just another slide to kind of back up anything that I didn't mention. We have a lot of respected certifications within the industry. Mainly we're that Microsoft solution provider and integrator. So we have a lot of competencies around that and really focus on being a gold partner. And, every year it's all about getting certifications, and we've got a great team to back up a lot of the areas we cover. So, and then when you think in terms of why concurrency, I think that this is an important slide. Some of the things that make us unique and different are because we really do have that culture of being change agents and, having that change agent approach of challenging customers where they are, to go further, to think bigger where possible. But we certainly also want to operate at the pace that they're willing to move, of course. But we do take that very human-centered approach on how we are able to handle the organizational change management and really drive that impact and ROI. It's one of the biggest reasons why people love concurrency too, is, we're that mid-sized, privately held Microsoft solutions integrator that can really be very agile in our approach and meet our customers where they're at, and we're very easy to do business with. And then, of course, we got Chris Blackburn today. I've worked with Chris on a lot of different security projects, and Defender is definitely way more than just virus protection against malware, right? So we're here to talk about that today. If you don't already know what zero trust is, that's going to be a big topic and focus as well. But hopefully you guys get a lot out of today's session and really have a good grasp on how to approach your security strategy going forward. Again, this is just kind of a summary of everything I've talked about here on the left of the areas that we can help with. But I will probably post a link in the chat just to kind of show you some of those things, some of those areas where we've provided a lot of education. That's a big thing that we try to do within our community is give back our knowledge, and not hold those secrets, right? We like to be on the leading edge. We like to be those thought leaders, and we like to share those things and figure out where other people are at and be collaborative. So webinars are a great place to do that. They're definitely interactive, interesting, and super helpful. And if you're looking for references and success stories, or even, what are other clients that are in my space, what are they doing? We have those success stories there. That's another great link that I'll probably provide at the end of this. And, when it comes to contact, if you want to get access to Chris Blackburn or our team after this, just feel free to contact me, and I can line you up with Chris, our solid security team, or in any area that you're looking for solutions within concurrency. We're super happy to help. We're passionate, and again, really easy to work with. So I hope you enjoy the presentation today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michael. It was a great overview. I loved it. And if anybody is interested and maybe Michael, if you could put your contact in the meeting chat, and they can go ahead and reach out if they desire. So thank you.
Will do. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, Liz, you are up. The stage is yours. We want to learn all about Microsoft Viva.
Awesome. Thank you. And it's so great to see everybody that's on the call. We have like 150 people on this call right now. It's just incredible. It's too bad we're not in person yet, but can't wait to get back to that stage where we can all be together in the same room. I know I started out my career going to the user groups way back when. Gosh, it was like 10 years ago, but still is very near and dear to my heart that we can all get together to have this learning space. And so today we're going to be talking about what is Microsoft Viva. And I know that there's a lot of people that have already started using it. It's been in existence for a couple of years now, but hey, there's a lot of questions and there's new stuff that comes out every single day. So wanted to just talk a little bit about what is Microsoft Viva today. So really excited to really talk about that and clear up some impressions and some questions that you might have. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Liz Sundet, and I happen to be a program manager at Microsoft. I have been working on Viva since before it was announced back in February of 2021. And so I have the unique pleasure of working with many different types of customers. I was working on Viva Connections for about 1.5 years, and I've recently moved to work on Viva Amplify. The team that I work with also works on Viva topics. And so we are sort of the aligned to the ODSP portion of all of Viva, but there's many other Viva products that are not necessarily aligned to ODSP as well. So with that, being in my job role, I get to do presentations like this, and I've traveled extensively. One of my favorite places happened to be the Organ Recital Hall in Haarlem, Netherlands, and being a musician myself, it was this wonderful pipe organ, and right across the street from there was an old church that Mozart used to play on that pipe organ. So as a study of Mozart for almost my entire life, that was really, really cool to be able to see that pipe organ, and it's still in existence today. So that's just a couple of the things that I have gotten to do with my time in the community, and love being able to meet lots of different people and really give back to the community and pay it forward. So that's just a little bit about me. But what is Microsoft Viva? What are we talking about? What is Microsoft
Hey, Liz.
Viva?
I had to raise my hand because it sounds like you are robotic. So I don't know. We're getting a lot of robotic. Maybe you turn into a robot during that call, which that would be fascinating. But
That would be really cool. But, we're just going to right now.
that's it right there. Our headphones
Take
dying.
my-
I've heard that sound before.
It's the headphones. Yep. They work great,
Awesome.
and then until they don't, and then they don't work great. So, but
Thank
if this
you.
is better, thank you very much for that. Appreciate that.
Much better. Yes.
Awesome. We're still going to be talking about Microsoft Viva today, and I wanted to go through a few of the modules that we have for Microsoft Viva. We're not going to be talking about everything. There's lots and lots of new announcements that are coming up in the next several months, but we're going to specifically focus in on what is connections, insights, learning, amplify, pulse, engage. We're going to talk about the whole suite and really what was the whole point behind this whole Microsoft Viva. I also have some customer stories that we can get to, and then I'm happy to take questions. I know lots of people are posting in the chat. I'm not going to actually look at the chat until towards the end of the presentation, but happy to take questions that we might have at the end of that presentation as well. All right. Okay, so one of the biggest questions that there is out there is, what is that Microsoft Viva thing? No, we are not partnering with, or trying to make a new song that is some, Elvis Presley tune. We are not partnering with Kimberly Clark to bring out the next set of, Microsoft Viva towels somewhere. That is not the case. But people are really kind of confused as what is this Viva product? Is it a product? Is it a thing that's built on top of products? What is it exactly? Is it new to the ecosystem? Is it not? I'm really kind of confused around that. And one of the best things that I heard, or one of the best explanations that I heard for this, is really when we're thinking about Microsoft Viva, is that Viva really translates from Spanish to bring life, or is just life. And so Microsoft is really bringing life to this thing called the Employee Experience Platform. And that is really the best explanation that I can come up with, is that it is really that new Employee Experience Platform. And that was launched on February 4th of 2021. So it's just over 2 years old right now. And this is really, the goal of this is to empower people and teams to be really the best they can be from anywhere that they are working. Now, it's built right now into Microsoft Teams and then experienced through several different areas of Microsoft 365. So employees can find what they need and when they need it. And some of them are like, awesome, because I'm working from home like I do. Some people are like, hey, I want to experience this even when I'm in the office or when I'm at a remote location. So wherever you are at in the world, we're bringing that employee experience to those people. And you really can't have an employee experience unless you involve your people within that employee experience. And people have told us things like culture and connection to other people in the organization. Those are valuable, but they're really hard to measure. They're hard to quantify. They're a little intangible. It's like the magic secret sauce that drives everyone. But gosh, they're really kind of untouchable in terms of the measurement. But we've partnered with Forrester in the Total Economic Impact Study, and now we do have some ways that we can measure Viva's impact on the bottom line. Now, Forrester went out to customers who have adopted Viva over the last year and interviewed them, and they found that they achieved some significant benefits to working with an employee experience platform. Some of it was, hey, we've got faster time for bringing on new people into our organization, or if there's somebody that transfers from one department to another, how do we get them up to speed on what we do here really, really quick? We saw improved employee productivity in terms of a reduction of being able to like search for information, search for people in the organization that can help me. And we saw a 20% reduction in employee attrition. And what that means in a day of time where everybody's getting a new job, I see on LinkedIn, everybody's got some announcement of a new job, or, unfortunately right now, a lot of people are losing their jobs in the tech kind of industry. Hey, that 20% in employee attrition, that's a big number. That's huge for some of these companies that lose 5 to 10% of the people, their workforce a year. And it's not those ones that are doing a great job on their against their goals and all those types of things, because they can find other places to work. It's the ones that are not doing so great that are sometimes left within the organization. So we want to keep all of those people that are doing a really great job. But these aren't the only statistics that we found. We found things like saving time for operations and teams, improved business outcomes, all of those types of things, and really seeing a huge return on their investment in a very short period of time. And so all of that is really nothing unless our employees say, yes, it's worth it. And so over the past few years, our workforce has changed dramatically. We've seen global trends emerge, the great reshuffle, the quiet quitting, and now we're entering into the era of what we call the great expectations, where employees, hey, we don't want to know about, the how and the where that we work. We have expectations there too, but we are asking ourselves, why should I work for your company? And it's really clear that employees are redefining that role of work in their lives, and they're taking a step back to evaluate that, hey, is it worth it? It's no longer just about getting that paycheck, but it's about prioritizing things like, I want a flexible work schedule. I want to be able to set my own work schedule. I want full autonomy, but also I want, some of that human connection and meaning, that they're doing something that's valuable in their work. And there was a great study that was done back in August called the Work Trend Index Report. And really, we learned a lot of items out of that Work Trend Index report, and still learning lots of things. But most of all, that organizations need to embrace the fact that people still want to come into an office sometimes, or all the time. Sometimes it just works better for different people to be in an office. They're more focused. They can communicate with their coworkers better. They don't have the distraction in the background, all of those types of things. And we found that 83% of those employees really want that type of connected experience while they're in an office setting. And then managers and leaders can really do more to support those employees. Maybe that's getting feedback. Maybe that's helping them prioritize their workload, all of those types of things. And organizations need to be able to recruit those employees with the right growth opportunities. It's not just about having a job, it's about where am I going next with my current job that I'm in. And 76% of employees said they'd stay longer at a company if they receive some learning and development support. And all of these workplace challenges, those leaders must balance that increasing economic uncertainty, inflation, supply chain disruptions, all of those types of things can really put pressure on the bottom line. And so one of the ways that the leaders can address those types of challenges is to find those modern ways to be able to engage and develop those employees, especially in what we call that hybrid world that we are now living in. And so there's a huge business impact on Microsoft Viva, not only to reduce labor costs or increase those revenues through business transformations, but really to take a look at what we have for employee engagement and reaching those audiences wherever they are at. If they are at home, if they are on a job site, if they are traveling, if they are working from an office, or maybe they're a hybrid of a lot of those types of things. What we want to do is really take a look at increasing that engagement, having those two-way dialogues, and then also as part of that, reducing that IT admin, that deployment, that development cost. These tools should be easy for people to use. Doesn't mean we are saying eliminate IT, doesn't mean we're saying eliminate all of the development. What it means is, hey, we've made an investment into the Microsoft platform already, build something that is on top and can leverage those existing investments that we already have, and then make it easier for people to be able to take advantage of, third-party ISVs, different integrators, all of those types of things, and reduce that development and those integration efforts that we have, because those items will seamlessly work all together with each other. So what is needed is really that new approach and that new category, which we're calling that employee experience platform. And that is putting people at the center and bringing all of those systems at work with support into an integrated employee experience, and providing people with those resources, that support that they need to exceed and thrive, no matter where their location is. And at the core of that is really what we call the digital fabric, that natural productivity, that collaboration of workspaces where the employees are spending their time. Typically that's in teams, right? And that's where we are putting a lot of emphasis and a lot of focus into building out some of these platforms so they can exist in Teams, they can exist in an email, they can exist in SharePoint, they can exist in those platforms where people spend that time. But also beyond that, those people want that personalized experience and that intelligence of empowering every type of worker and every function. So we have this engagement layer that consists of those apps and services that are pointed directly for those employees to have that personalized experience that helps them thrive, helps them onboard, helps them give feedback to those different people that are working on these platforms, gives them resources, gives them communities, and gives them so much more within that, especially when working remotely. I know this is myself. I work remotely 100% of the time. And so, hey, I gotta feel like I'm engaged with my team or know what's happening with my team sometimes. And there's some ways that I prefer that the rest of the team doesn't, necessarily prefer. My manager posts a once a week kind of update in a Teams channel. I always miss it. I'm like 1 in 3 weeks I will read and I will catch up on all of the types of stuff. Hey, I prefer, maybe a group chat or something, but that's harder to do with the bigger team sometimes too. And then, really having all of that connected to the existing infrastructure, and then that bi-directional integration to be able to, things like having it directly apply to the systems of record and point solutions, and then making it easy for other groups of people, HR, IT, corporate communications, all of those people that I want to have involved in what is this employee experience to be able to bring all of these together. All right, so when we first launched Microsoft Viva, it was really just for what we call modules. Now we've got so much more in this experience area, and it's bringing together lots of different tools that employees need to be successful and work into one unified solution that enables employee connection, insight, purpose, and growth. And so lots of different experiences that will bring to each stage of a different part of the customer's journey. And whether that's, keeping people informed, included, inspired, improving productivity or improving that well-being with those actionable insights. And I'll talk a little bit more about how Insights is quickly becoming one of my favorite products. Didn't think that would happen, but it is quickly becoming one of my favorite products. Really aligning that people to their work team and those organizational goals with Microsoft Goals. And I just started using Goals, and while there's some things, this was the acquisition of Ally.io. While there's some things of, that I would immediately want to change or want more features on, I'm getting used to the Viva Goals. It's a really nice product, and we're starting to use it within our own teams as well and report on it every month. And then in terms of the growth, this is one of those areas where I am especially interested in, as an instructor, as a teacher, as a adjunct professor, I am constantly, involved in some type of learning, and really having that growth mindset and ability to enable other employees to learn, to be able to grow, to be able to succeed. And that's where we bring topics and learning really in conjunction with each other. Topics to help, identify what are those important topics, and then learning not only to facilitate, some of those company learnings that we all have to do, the security, the compliance, the, those types of trainings, but also to grow and extend some trainings. And I know this week we are especially focused on a learning week. It's called Fix, Hack, Learn, and it's, a great learning week for us to be able to think about some of those learnings that we might do and go out and find those things, and be able to learn from each other as well. So this is all encompassing in that set of experiences, but this is also backed by Microsoft 365. So we've got all of the privacy, all of the security, all of those integrated experiences, and being able to deliver that on a platform that admins already know, and be able to improve on all of those employee experiences for different specific roles and functions that exist out in the ecosystems. And one of those is that Viva Sales. Now, I'm not going to touch on Viva Sales today because it is very role specific, and it is, more aligned with some of our CRM tools, but that is one of those new products as well, that, is in the ecosystem to be able to provide that personalized experience. So let's dig a little bit deeper in one of my favorite areas. As you know, I started out today by introducing myself and talking about I've been aligned to Viva Connections for quite a while. I didn't make the switch until about 6 months ago to working with Viva Amplify, and Viva Amplify is only going to be GA this summer. So you know, Viva Connections is still very near and dear to my heart. I spent a lot of time in my career creating intranet sites, and Viva Connections was a really nice fit for me because it is that sort of gateway into a lot of these other employee experiences. Bringing together all of those main elements from our corporate intranet, like news, announcements, those conversations, apps, tasks, resources, all of those things right within a single place. And the experience really reflects on that organization because you can brand it, you can use your name, you can use your icons, you can use your colors. I mean, it's SharePoint after all, right? But it's also personalized for each employee. And that's because AI really is delivering a feed of relevant content, information, news, and resources to you. And the organization can tailor those experiences for those targeted employee groups. So if frontline workers have maybe specific pieces of information that they would be most interested in, yeah, we can target some of that information to those frontline workers, maybe in a specific region or a specific role. And then you can add custom components to enrich that employee experience using zero code, no code configurations, but also having that powerful developer framework using SPFX as well within that. And then you can also integrate some investments that you've already made. So who watched the Super Bowl last night? Yep, me. I saw the Workday commercial. It was really interesting. But yet at the same time, I was thinking about, you know, hey, that's one of the partners that we have in terms of the overall employee experience. But we have so many others as well. You know, Workday, ServiceNow, several others that we have. Viva Home. Who has Viva Home? Yeah, just starting to roll out, people. So, you know, maybe Dawn covered this in some of the updates last month. But yeah, Viva Home, or that Viva Connections home experience, is really where we are putting that central launch pad for every employee. And this is offering a single point of entry to not only the company brand, those resources, those tools. And so you might start off your day with, you know, some of the insights, some of the to-dos from some of the Viva apps and services, but I can also get to, you know, several of my other areas, you know, from having that dashboard, having that news feed, to bring all of that together in a singular experience. Now, does that mean, oh, wait, this is totally different? I want my home site because people put a lot of investment into that home site. Is this automatically going to replace it? There is a way to be able to turn that off. There is PowerShell for it, that type of thing. But I really strongly urge you, because it's got so many of the same ingredients, especially putting that right front and center at your fingertips, give it a try. We're hearing a lot from customers that they actually really do like this experience, and it was built primarily for those people that, hey, we haven't been able to invest on keeping our corporate intranet up to date. I know how that happens. I've been there, been in that position many times over. And so if you don't necessarily have some of those, you know, ways to invest on keeping your home site up to date, home site refreshed, or maybe it's on a different platform, this is a great solution to get you by in that interim. And we also bring in that to our mobile devices. So we can experience this from both desktop and mobile and bring that employee experience to those knowledge workers as well as those frontline workers. And this was huge to be able to have that mobile experience so that I can look up information that's going to be always right at my fingertips. I don't know of a single person who just decides to go somewhere and leave their phone at home intentionally. It is usually always in my back pocket or in my purse or, you know, on my person somewhere. And, you know, if you do forget it, gosh, you feel lost, right? I can't check into my flight. I can barely go someplace because I have a need for, different maps on my phone. We use it for everything. So bringing, those information and those productivity apps and those resources to me on my mobile device was very important. I probably accessed our corporate intranet, and I hate to say this, but I really do, probably more on my mobile device than I do within a regular Teams desktop or a Teams client nowadays. Just being how I work, I like to consume the news, on my mobile device. The apps and the dashboard are quick and easy for me to go into and experience and such. And I mentioned a couple partners, Workday was one of them that I saw on the Super Bowl commercial. We've got ServiceNow, LinkedIn Learning, lots and lots of different partners that we've worked with over the years so that we can leverage some of those existing investments, not only in the Microsoft technologies, but in those systems that we might have in our workplace already. And so customers told us they don't want to start from scratch. They don't want something completely new or, rip and replace their existing systems of record. We want to extend those investments by better connecting them together and then making them more available in that modern experience. So over the past year, we've announced lots of different partnerships with those industry leading professionals and so many more that are in the works. Believe me, lots and lots more that are in the works. Wanted to talk a little bit about some of those, successful rollouts and what that really means, and working with customers and partners and many different roles throughout the last couple of years and working with Viva. It is a little bit of a shift into some of the adoption, some of the change management. We've got some new roles that we are really starting to highlight, especially around HR and especially around corporate communicators. Sometimes marketing is in with that. A lot of different roles that we're seeing pop up in being interested in some of these tools, some of these technologies to be able to go out and really explain to them, this is more business centric. IT should be involved. Not saying IT shouldn't be involved, but IT is one of those partners that you really gotta mesh with and work hand in hand together with. And, if you don't, it's not going to be as successful of an implementation. But what I love the most about this is those companies that actually went out and made focus groups and sat with those end users. They pulled people in from, different factory locations. They, had different people from the office areas, or they brought people in who, were working out in the field to be able to talk about what is your experience as an employee. And that is so delighting to hear in terms of involvement, in terms of, having some skin in the game and being able to be that champion because I've given, the owners of this, hey, here's really what you got to do. One of my favorite things to do is to be able to help develop some of the adoption content that is out on adoption.microsoft.com. One of the things that we just pushed out was the adoption recommended practices for Viva Connections. And so highly recommend that you go and take a look at the content that is out there. It is wonderful. And then finally, one of the questions that I get asked quite often, hey, so Viva Connections, that's just a replacement for your intranet, right? I'm like, no. Don't think about it that way. Think about it as an enhancement, not a replacement. It is the hub. It is the entry point for everybody's experience. And that's really what the vision of Viva Connections is, to be able to get to all of these different employee experiences, all of these different modules that we have as part of Microsoft Viva starts with Viva Connections. And so being able to take advantage of that and It won't show you any of those modules that you don't have licenses for. So it just shows, the ones that you have licenses already for and being able to use that. And then being able to really take advantage of having some of those highlighted areas right at your fingertips so that you can use that, moving forward through all of these modules. All right, so moving on a little bit to Viva Insights and talking about that in terms of that insight area. This is really to get, better work habits. And when I first saw Viva Insights, I was like, okay, sure, I'm going to build some better work habits, by tracking and improving, some of these things. And I was a little like skeptical, but wow, it's really kind of interesting in terms of like, hey, I'm needing to take a break a little bit more often. That's good for my mental health. And Viva Insights will say, hey, you've had back-to-back meetings, like you've got back-to-back meetings all day, and you've had it for the last few days. Do you want to schedule some time maybe on Friday just to kind of like block out your calendar so that you can have some focus time or some time to recuperate? And once I started trying some of these suggestions, it was really interesting as to how that improved my productivity. Like I was better focused on some of those meetings that I had back to back. And, it gave my managers some insights as well. Like, hey, people are back to back. They need like 5 minutes. So we actually cut our meeting times from 30 minutes to 25 minutes, or from a full hour, 60 minutes, back to 50 minutes, just to give some people some time, just to kind of, hey, I need some time to recuperate, grab a drink, go to the bathroom, walk around, all of those kinds of things. And it helped me improve some of that effectiveness of those meetings. And it also helped me improve that well-being because I had a little bit more focused time to spend on the things that were really good. But it also gives those managers some insights into, hey, what is a healthy, successful team? Are we scheduling one-on-ones, or do you have no meeting days? Are you feeling okay? All of those kinds of things. Hey, I'm seeing that you're sending out emails at 11:30 at night. Should we be talking about that? Are you sleepless? Yes, I am, but that's just for a short period of time or whatever the case may be. But having that ability to be able to talk about that and then build some personal habits that impact some of that team culture, as well as, what's healthy for me, and having those managers being able to see some of those, types of things for the team has really been able to, better successfully manage those. And then, this was, a great example for those leaders to address those complex challenges. One of those things was, hey, we're going to cut our meetings back, or we're going to go with, a no meeting Friday or something of that sort, and be very cognizant of scheduling time where you have some of that focus and have more energy. And I know, my energy is great at the first part of the week. I love Mondays, believe it or not. I'm probably the only human on earth that says I love Mondays, but I really love Mondays because I've had the whole weekend to kind of recuperate and all that type of stuff. By Thursday, I'm kind of at a cut and paste. Like, I'm burned out a little bit. I need some time to kind of, re-energize and then be able to process. And so that's one of the things that our management and those senior leaders in my organization really talked about is, let's have those no meeting Fridays. You're still expected to work, but let's have those no meeting Fridays to get a little bit better with that. And then, as I mentioned, Viva Learning is one of those things that I'm very, very passionate about. And employees can really, access all of their available learnings through a personalized learning homepage. So I go there quite often. I can quickly access, things that are assigned to me, or things that I've, started but haven't completed yet. maybe things that are recommended. And this week I will be spending quite a bit of time in some of those courses that, hey, you know what, I'm interested in this topic or this area. You know, I haven't taken the opportunity to really kind of explore what is Chat GPT yet, and you know, all the jokes and stuff around it and that type of thing. But hey, what is this? Can I learn something more about that? And having the ability to take in, you know, like a LinkedIn Learning or an edX course, or a Pluralsight course, or whatever else I've got licenses to, or you know, some of those free kind of areas. You know, hey, this is good for me to, you know, kind of take a step back and focus on my learning, you know, because I'm always learning and growing and very passionate about those types of things. So, you know, Viva Learning does surface that content from multiple providers, not only that Microsoft or LinkedIn, but there's a lot of third-party management systems. You know, I talked about Pluralsight, you know, Coursera, you know, edX, lots of those. And then also I can even look to my own learning content, you know, whether that be Microsoft Learn or something else. And, you know, hey, I can do these from my phone, or, you know, from my desktop, or any of those types of things. So that really helps me get to that learn. And then if I do have a learning that I have, that I'm like, hey, you know what? Somebody else asked me about this. You know, maybe I share it with Michelle and say, hey, was a really great learning. I learned a lot. So sharing this with you as well. So I can put that into a Teams message. I can put that into a meeting chat or an email, and then being able to, you know, kind of continue on that culture of social learning and saying, hey, I highly recommend this for you. You know, you and I were talking about, you know, this particular subject area. I found this learning. It was fantastic. I actually had, you know, a lot of conversations with a girlfriend over the weekend, and, you know, she's like, hey, you know, send me that quote from Satya. And I'm like, oh, I'll do one better. I'll actually find the article on LinkedIn and send it to you. You know, so those are all kinds of things that Viva Learning really brings to us. All right, so I talked a little bit about Viva Amplify and how I'm moving on to and been working with that team for a while. And so, you know, our new communications capabilities in Viva Amplify. And so I just wanted to share a little video with you because I think they can explain it a little bit better than I can at this point. I'm also, you know, hey, I don't want to say anything that's under NDA. Can we hear that?
No sound.
No sound.
You might want to reshare, I guess.
I thought I shared with I will stop sharing, however, and I will reshare because I thought I was sharing with the full capabilities. Include computer sound. I see the problem. It's not allowing me to because of the speaker setup that I have now.
Oh, bummer. You might,
Yeah.
Can you do the voiceover?
I will try my best to do the voiceover. But so yeah, you know, really with the communication capabilities that we have in Microsoft Viva, you can use the message to drive business outcomes and then plan, create, manage, and publish all of your workplace communications from one app. And that's what really we are bringing together within Amplify is this orchestrated communications. And I love that word. Even as a musician, you know, I want to orchestrate everything in my life, right? But, you know, it's really about reaching your employees on any device, wherever they are working, and whether you're planning a very large campaign or just sending out weekly updates, this is really one of those areas, Viva Amplify, that we want to make it easier to be able to create those messages that resonate with that different audience, and then, get you into the right channel. So we're going to save time by rewriting messages for different channels or different audiences. And just in a few clicks, you can, find that single place to share drafts, track approvals. It helps you visualize and optimize your messages by previewing your final output and then using writing guidance for while you are creating that particular message. Now you can define campaign objectives to help set those clear messaging goals within multiple channels. And then whether it's Outlook, SharePoint, Teams, or Yammer, or other places, you can do this all before you hit send. And then when you use that campaign hub to understand and track the different impact that your messages are going to make, know what's working and how to improve those messages for the very next time. So if you have a story to tell, you can now amplify it with Microsoft Viva Amplify. All right. And there's also Pulse. And I will just go through the talk track on Pulse as well here, since we don't have audio. So with the new feedback capabilities in Microsoft Viva, managers and teams leads can request quick and confidential input from their teams when they need it to help surface issues earlier than the traditional review cycles. So managers can choose from a range of research-backed templates, and they can also browse from a catalog of questions that are organized by key themes that are top of mind, such as well-being. Here you can easily customize and add questions to your Pulse survey, and then once you've added those target recipients, your Pulse is ready to go in just a couple of minutes. Team members can then give confidential feedback right in the flow of where they are working, and they can select actions which would be most helpful, making the process quick as well as results oriented. And then once complete, Pulse compiles detailed and anonymous reports and then automatically sorts those questions by average scores. And then clicking into those specific questions, you can see how favorably team members are feeling, as well as trends over time, saving requesters the time and effort that it takes. Now, managers can see suggestions from the team and then sort by popularity. It provides actionable recommendations to managers with those next steps, and it also prevents links to learning sources or presents links to learning sources for greater awareness on the different topics. All right. So that's a little bit about Amplify and a little bit about Pulse. We also have quite a few other modules that are coming as more of a cross suite. And one of those is the people and organizational discovery. So really being able to see who are my subject matter experts within a particular org, particular space, through that enriched profile card experience that Microsoft 365 customers already are having. We're introducing these immersive apps that are able to enrich organizational browsing capabilities. So this is going to be a new premium people or discovery capabilities that are going to be available for the suite, those people that are in the suite. And then I know one of the things that I'm looking for especially is this answers in Microsoft Viva. I don't know if it's just because I have a friend of mine that's working in it, or just it's one of my favorite areas in terms of bringing that Viva engage Yammer type of capabilities and being able to ask questions right within the flow of work. And so much learning and skilling is also happening with those experts in the organization while you're on the job. So Answers is using AI to match those employee questions to be able to get those answers, as well as the people who have identified as experts across that organization to help put that collective knowledge to work for all of those employees. So you can kind of think of answers like a Q&A service like Quarta for your company or inside your organization as well. And I know this is a little bit of an old roadmap because this was presented in December of 2022. We usually do about a roadmap per quarter, so we haven't come out with the newest one yet. So there's certain items that are on here. I'm looking at things like, you know, amplify preview. Yeah, that's already, we're already on that. We're going already with that. Have been for a little while. So, you know, there might be some types of things that are on that roadmap that is not coming soon, but already here, already available, those types of things. But lots and lots of great stuff to look at in terms of all of those different pillar areas that really can bring, you know, some new enhancements, new features that you might adapt into your organizations for making better use of these tools. All right, so I wanted to talk a little bit about, you know, one of my favorite passions is to be able to work with those different customers. I happen to work with Bloom extensively, and Bloom was a really interesting use case. And actually, after I started working with them, everybody do this at some point in time today. Go and look at the hardware that is inside your kitchen cabinets. And it might have this little logo that says Bloom on it. That's this company. They're a company in Austria, been around for quite a while, you know, about 7,000 people, 8,000 people, you know, at that company in Austria. And one of the things that they identified, especially with the pandemic, and, you know, all of the office workers were sent home to go work from home, go work remotely. But the people that were actually making the hardware, you know, they had to come into work. There was machines that they had to be able to run. There was, you know, handoffs that needed to be taken. And then there was all these safety protocols that got added. And these people have been with these companies for their entire work careers, and many of them. And, you know, they said, hey, you know, we don't feel connected anymore. There's no office workers coming to, you know, coming down to say hello. You know, we have to bring, you know, some announcements and talk about them, you know, amongst ourselves. There's nobody posting information in the break rooms or, you know, on the bulletin boards anymore, because those people that did those jobs were no longer there. And so they were kind of missing out, and said, this is becoming a big problem. You know, we want to be able to feel connected to not only the culture of Bloom, because we are the culture of Bloom, but, you know, being able to connect to other coworkers and be able to ask those questions. And these were also people that didn't have access to any kind of company resources prior to this. Sure, they might have had a computer or workstation somewhere, but that was largely to run the machine that was sitting right in front of them. So things like email, things like having Teams, that was not something that they had access to. So being able to communicate, you know, they had to like stop the machine and walk over and ask somebody a question. And that really wasn't, you know, allowed during the time of the pandemic. So they wanted to have all of those challenges really being looked at in terms of building out that employee experience. And so they were very, very successful, not only with, you know, kind of the change management or their adoption of this. They had a small poster with a QR code. And in the poster, the only word that was written on it, and of course it was written in German, but it was translated roughly to curious with a question mark. And they had 88% of their workforce walk up with, you know, a cell phone, mobile device, take a picture of the QR code. When they got to the QR code, it ran a video, a short 1.5-minute video that talked about what they were going to see with Viva Connections, what types of things that are going to be new, this whole Teams experience. And then at the end of the video that got them really kind of excited, they had some resource links for additional training, a SharePoint site where people could go to see who the team was that was working on it. And they had great awareness of what things were coming. And once they started rolling out into a pilot, they had about 200 people of their 2,200 person workforce that was, in the shop floor areas that were, wanting to use Teams and trying out Teams. And they said, hey, we need to use Teams right now. Get everybody on Teams. We don't care when you roll out Viva Connections, but we need Teams right now, because what it's allowing us to do is be able to contact people, that wouldn't normally, we'd have to stop our machine and go over and talk to them. So was there a question, or did I just get a little feedback?
Yeah, I think there was just a little feedback.
Okay, no worries. So yeah, that was Bloom. PayPal's another customer. They improved like a lot of their well-being, in terms. Michelle, can you still hear me? I was muted.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So this was, an example of really improving well-being with Viva Insights, and being able to see, those remote operations that people were working, all hours. And it put a strain on many of those day-to-day kinds of functions. And so this was about, really improving that employee well-being through those insights, being able to, change some of the cultural types of things, and really using Glint to provide that check-in. Hey, how are things going? And, we've used Glint, we've used, some of the Pulse types of things as well, just to be able to monitor and measure, like, hey, how are things going? It's just one question, you're responding to one question once a week. But it's really, allowed them to create some wellness campaigns, some initiatives around those to help those employees not feel like they were, hey, you're working from home, so we want you to be working all the time, and having some balance there. And then the last item that we did, we call this, really customer zero, is our own internal Microsoft. And, we eat our own dog food. We don't create products that we don't consume ourselves every single day. Sometimes that works great. Sometimes it's like, oh boy, what are we in for, kind of thing. But I am a very big proponent of the dog food experience, and being able to, take advantage of some of these products. And Microsoft is that customer zero. We put in Viva Connections. We have it working within our environments, right? I can go to my cell phone, my Teams app, and open up Viva Connections experience. I can open up Viva Connections on my desktop, all of those types of things. And we really had to kind of restructure and revolutionize. And that was something that my team worked on as well, with creating dashboards, creating news feeds, all of those types of elements that brought Viva Connections into what we call the customer zero, being Microsoft's ourselves. And so, this is really one of those first lessons that we like to talk about with customers in terms of being able to create that. And those are some of the lessons. Hey, internally, we listen to each other's feedback, and then being able to share that with customers as we move forward. Microsoft is an important customer to Microsoft. And, even though some people are like, oh, wow, that's really kind of, different. That's where we get a lot of our, not only our adoption types of learnings, but also, hey, what scenarios are we targeting? Me working on Amplify, I'm targeting my own teams to be able to give me scenarios that we're working on for Amplify as well. So lots of different things, not only with connections, Viva Learning, Viva Goals, Insights. Hey, I even use topics, to be able to create some pages for some of the programs that I'm working with. And about the only one that I really haven't used so far or seen or don't, play with on a at least a weekly basis is probably Viva Sales. And that is because it's aligned a little bit more to those people that use CRM. And so I use CRM, but I don't use it for a sales purpose. I use it more for, tracking some of the information that I'm working on with different customers and being able to think about, different programs and such. So it's a little bit different in terms of how I use CRM. So, but yeah, that's really a lot of those different modules that all fit into the overall employee experience. So next time somebody asks you, what is Microsoft Viva? Hopefully you'll be able to, give them a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of expertise after seeing what I presented today, and wanted to open up for anybody that might have some questions along these same lines. So. And yes, I will. There are links to the videos. I will put them in the chat. Are all channels similar to audience targeting in SharePoint? Eileen, can you come off mute and kind of explain? Maybe I'm not getting enough context around that. Not hearing anything there.
Let me see if she's still online. Eileen,
Online?
are you still online? Yeah, it looks like she may have dropped.
Yep, understood. Yeah, I'm not sure on that question. How is this different from organizational news? So Sarah, I'm guessing your question is related to Viva Home, and how is that different from organizational news? For the site that you have set as your home site in SharePoint, that is also when you run the PowerShell script or go into the admin center and set your home site, it also becomes an organizational news site. You can add additional organizational news sites where you cannot yet add additional home sites, however. So organizational news sites works within a hub, outside of a hub, any kind of architectural construct that you want to showcase. Organizational news sites impacts a little bit differently the Viva Connections feed web part than it does the just a news feed web part. And so there's two different web parts. Organizational news sites are going to impact that feed, that Viva Connections feed web part. And what it does is it puts it into an algorithm. So any of those organizational news sites, hey, we've got a benefits site that's not part of our home site, but we have benefits that people want to know about. And we have news articles, especially around October, November timeframe, for people to re-sign up for benefits and stuff. That's a great example of how to use an organizational news site. So that is just a little bit different. I think you can add up to like 20 different organizational news sites or something of that sort. So quite a few advantages that take a little bit of a different look at your architecture there. So organization news. Oh, so it was in context to Viva Amplify. Thank you. So organization news, that is one of those areas where you might post news into a SharePoint site. Viva Amplify will take it and amplify it out to several different areas. So you create your message once, you create it, in a SharePoint news post, similar to a news post. But then you can post it to SharePoint, you can post it to Teams, you can post it to Yammer, you can post it to Outlook, all of those types of things. And it's going to actually restructure it a little bit different. And then not only that, but you can get metrics on that particular campaign. Hey, how many people are seeing this in Outlook? How many people are seeing this in SharePoint? Who is sharing this information? Are they engaging with this information? Are we getting a, thumbs up, or people, writing comments, all of those types of things? That's all part of Viva Amplify. Another question. In your experiences with orgs using Viva, what have been common elements that have led them to culturally embrace Viva services? Yeah, great question. It really depends, but, pandemic, huge in terms of changes to our culture. And so a lot of these fit within some of the, ways that we have now started working, whether that's, hey, we've got a lot more people working remote or a lot more people working hybrid. We need a few different solutions to re-engage them so they don't feel like they are isolated and being part of the organization and what is going forward. Will users be able to customize what they want to see in Viva Insights, or is it only controlled by Microsoft? I'm not sure on that. I get those personal insights. And one of the things that I love the most is, hey, do you have adequate time for focus? This week looks like a busy week. You've got your calendar, really locked up. Do you need some more time to focus? So I really like that. And I also really like to be able to give other teammates praise. And Viva Insights is one of those areas where I go and, hey, I can click on a card within my Viva connection space to go give praise to one of my teammates who might have done a job well done or have helped me out tremendously, and being able to share that praise back and forth that my manager then sees. So not sure on, like how you can customize that. A lot of different tools there. I haven't really tried to customize anything with Viva Insights yet. So we're planning on using Viva Connections dashboard on your SharePoint intranet. Would this be a great place to allow personalized information for user groups, frontline workers, or have you seen this being used in SharePoint a lot? And if so, what is the best case? Highly recommend exactly what you were thinking about here. Go out to your end users and ask them what kinds of apps they want for their dashboards. And then you can segment that. All right, you can have lots and lots of different dashboard cards, or those ACEs that we call them, and then segment them by those different roles. All right, the one thing that I always suggest to people is try to make sure that you limit it to those roles. So you're not having, oh, we've got 25 cards, in 3 different roles, and they all see the 25 different cards. Well, that isn't very fun, like why wouldn't you limit that a little bit so that users are seeing like 8 to 10 pieces of information, right? The human mind really cannot distinguish between, a lot of that. Plus you're doing the scroll thing up and down, and yeah, that's not a great experience. So if you can try to limit how many of those cards that you're presenting to those different audiences at one time, you can actually toggle back and forth in Viva Connections in the dashboard experience to be able to see all of those different audiences and see how those cards are lining up for those different people that are going to be seeing that, so you don't have empty spaces and all those types of things. But yes, highly recommend that you go and do that. Some of those cards are going to be for everyone, those global cards, but let me give you an example of a really poor audience targeted card for myself personally. And that is, we have these cafes all throughout campus in Redmond. And one of the apps that I have on my dashboard is that, hey, find a cafe, find out what's for lunch in building 34. Well, building 34 is where I'm associated to, but I'm also about 1,800 miles away from building 34. So that's a little bit further away for me to go for lunch every day. So it actually shows me now that you don't have any cafes near you. Sorry, you're not going to be able to go get lunch. But my refrigerator is like right behind me, so that's just fine. I'm well fed, so all good in that regard. All right, so Michelle, I'm going to turn it back over to you and allow you to take the floor and introduce the next speaker. How's that?
Awesome. Fantastic job. Thank you so much. Love having you. Love seeing you. Always a pleasure. And if anyone has any other questions, throw them in the chat. I'll make sure I get them to Liz.
Yes. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Hey, Chris, how are you?
Good afternoon. How are you?
Doing great. Doing wonderful. Thanks for being patient. You have a whole hour, so you've got all the time in the world. Take your time, and really excited to learn what you are going to share today.
Well, thank you. And it's a nice sunny day here in Minnesota. And it's a Monday. So things are off to a good start. You know, for those of us that are Chiefs fans, it's even better. So
That's
I'll just
right.
leave it at that. But thanks again for the opportunity to be back here at the user group. But always love these opportunities to speak because they give me even an opportunity to take a lot of the knowledge that I've been able to assimilate through working with customers about these different Microsoft 365 technologies. And Defender is just one that is vastly popular, and working in it every day with multiple customers around the country, around the globe. And as organizations are looking at their ways to save costs and they're looking at that zero trust story, Defender is always front and center. And so in some organizations, trying to help leadership understand, Defender is not just a malware tool. It's not just an antivirus tool. There's so much more to it. Usually this is that entry point into being able to have those conversations, to be able to say it can do so much as an endpoint security tool, but it also can do so much more and help you streamline and strengthen your security posture. So that's a little bit about what we will be going over, hopefully less than an hour today, give you a little bit of extra time back. But a little bit about me. Been in the Microsoft consulting space for 20 years. I've been here at Concurrency. It'll be 8 years in July. I've been married for 20 years, so almost neck and neck for about the amount of time that I've been in IT as I've been married. And fun fact, tomorrow is my anniversary, so it's an easy one to remember. In terms of kind of the work that I do here at Concurrency, I'm an architect and delivery lead with everything M365, whether it's that hybrid cloud experience, whether it's identity, collaboration, security and compliance, or endpoint management. I've worked with a number of organizations in that Fortune 1000 space over the last 20 years, and always love being able to talk to them about these technologies in the M365 world. And when I'm not behind the keyboard, I am a DJ. I've played around the world. I also am a foodie, and always love try traveling and finding new cuisines while I travel. So that's a little bit about me. I've got my contact information. My blog, memphistech.net, has its origins back when I lived in Tennessee it's almost 20 years ago. Let's go with 17 this month. And my LinkedIn's on here as well. So a little bit about me. So let's dive in and let's talk about why we're here. And a lot of it, I will be honest, does happen to revolve around cybersecurity. It evolves around everything that we've seen in the news over the last 5 years. And attacks not only continue to get more sophisticated, but they become more targeted. Supply chain attacks, where it's not just attacking one company. Those bad actors are looking to take advantage of that company and their customers. So increasing that attack radius has increased. Things like double extortion, where these bad actors will say, hey, we crypto locked your servers. Here's the key. But guess what? Now we want more money. Otherwise, we're going to release all of your information that we've uploaded to some third party spot somewhere on the dark web, or maybe even just on the internet, keeping you from exposing that information. They will extort you a second time. We've seen ransomware as a service where bad actors or maybe even nation states, etc., they can hire services, they pay a fee, and they have all the infrastructure. So it's almost like outsourced ransomware to be able to attack organizations. It's quite crazy if you go read some of the articles about it on the web. And then just some of the traditional approaches. Unpatched systems, even with things like Windows Update for Business, with auto patch, there are companies that are still working to adopt those technologies, and unpatched systems are still out there. And Microsoft's done a great job with the update rings over the last couple of years to kind of close that gap, but ultimately it does rely on organizations to keep on top of their patching. And then phishing. Phishing in the last year or two through email, as crazy as it sounds, is still probably the top way that bad actors get into organizations. People aren't being mindful. That's why with customers that we worked with, they're having some of those phishing campaigns, doing it on monthly and quarterly basis, so people are mindful about the emails that they're clicking through is one way to combat that, but it's still a very popular way for organizations to be compromised. So all of this at its foundations are the reasons why security and looking at things like zero trust need to be at the core of everything you do, whether it's your identities, whether it's how you manage your endpoints, how you manage your applications, your data, your network, your infrastructure, and your organizational change management. Those are all very important pieces and part of the pillars, which we'll talk about for zero trust. And if you've been around the Microsoft space, you probably have heard this multiple times on what is zero trust. It's verify explicitly. It's make sure you are using least privileged access and that you're assuming breach. And with all of these, it's taking all of the data, in a really smart zero trust environment. This is happening real time. It's using AI, and you're acting smart with your resources. And some of those resources really are endpoints. Your identity is those entry points. And so these combined as foundational approaches for zero trust will help us as we look at applying zero trust to our organization. And so I've got a blog coming out on our Concurrency website later this month. That's what the little QR code is in the corner. So feel free to snap that and save that to your favorites. We've got a lot of really insightful people on our team that just love to talk about security. They love to talk about the Microsoft technologies. For me, it is really a lot around zero trust and really talking to organizations about those paradigms of zero trust and being able to apply those and doing it holistically. And that really does focus on some of the 6 core pillars of zero trust. It is our identities, our endpoints, our network, our data, our apps, and our infrastructure. So all of these are sitting on top of those 3 methodologies for verifying explicitly least privileged access and assuming breach. And so as we are looking at applying zero trust to our organizations and looking across those pillars, can you ask yourself, does your current security solutions really wrap all of these pillars of zero trust into one suite? Or are maybe you say, yes, we are using zero trust, we're applying those methodologies in our organization, but we are using a lot of different tools. That's probably the most common conversation that I'm having with customers. And there are gaps typically when you're using multiple tool sets, or it's very complicated. You have to have specially trained individuals. The list goes on and on and on about the different things that those different security solutions can have and can impact your IT teams to be able to apply some of those protections. And so then really, we're looking at protecting the devices as really a traditional approach. And that's where the Defender story comes into play and looking at Defender at its core. And I want to dive in because it is so much more than just a malware protection tool. It's so much more than just an EDR. But let's revisit kind of what some of the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint capabilities are at its core functionality that you would hear for it as a tool set for an EDR solution. And so these are the 6 core functionality areas that Defender for Endpoint really helps to provide. It provides that EDR, that endpoint detection and response. It allows for easy hunting through KQL. I've seen some really powerful queries that we built with customers, or some of the people on our team have put together for customers that they can easily save into their security dashboard to do some quick analysis. And sometimes it's not even really security. It's looking to see what devices are plugged into machines that might be potentially used for some sort of data exfiltration. Sometimes it's just looking to see, with some customers, can we block USB access except for certain devices? We have a lot of customers that are looking to increase their security on their endpoints, and something as easy as a flash drive is one way that they can do this. KQL is a great way to be able to surface some of that in some of the dashboards that are available. And one of those key dashboards in the security portal is the threat and vulnerability management. There's a lot of tools in the space, and we'll talk about a couple of those third parties throughout this conversation that are looking at threats on machines. This is a built-in capability for Defender for Endpoint, and it's built into Windows. That's one of the big things to take away, and I'll talk a little bit about what is the autonomy of the Defender for Endpoint services that live on Windows. We'll talk about those in a little bit, but having a tool that's built into Windows, it's automatically looking for threats and automatically looking at vulnerabilities, and feeding this into a centralized portal that helps you look at your configuration score and be able to move the needle to continue to strengthen in Zero Trust is one of the more popular conversations that I've had with customers over the last year, over and above this being a EDR tool set, or even being just a built-in anti-malware service. That's the traditional tool that really lives as part of Windows Defender, and really Defender for Endpoint is activating that cloud functionality to be able to leverage AI to be able to help your machine act smarter, to help you act smarter as IT admins and organizations to look at the security posture on your machines. Another component that is also built in is attack surface reduction. Really, it's a set of features that are built into Windows where when you turn the right bits on, it will do things like protect you from bad macros or things potentially within a Word document being opened and allowing bad actors to come into your machine. So those capabilities exist native to Windows, even over above trying to have an EDR solution. The Defender for Endpoint and the Microsoft 365 E5 security toolset allows you to more centrally manage it in the cloud and be able to give you access to reports. But you could still do that without any of those tool sets to increase your attack surface protection. So those components live natively, and it also, as part of some of those native capabilities, you have things like network protection, being able to use a centralized portal like the Microsoft security toolset to provide web protection and network protection, and be able to plug in the hashes of files that are potentially bad, or IP addresses or websites that are potentially bad, and being able to prevent those are capabilities that live natively to Defender, as well as the automated investigation and response. So those are capabilities that in hand with the E5 tool sets and Defender for Endpoint and the EDR will look at threats as they come in, determine if they are ones that they can easily be remediated. If so, that happens in the background, and then you as an IT admin are just able to look at alerts, make sure that that has been taken care of carefully and been resolved by using automation, or if you need to have someone within your IT organization handle and reach out to those end users to be able to resolve any sort of threats. And then even over and above your team, let's say you have a small team that are helping to provide services to your organization, you can use things like the managed threat hunting service, the threat experts, to help you leverage some capabilities and be able to extend your team, leveraging individuals at Microsoft to be able to help out. So taking all those at its core functionality, it's just the core. We'll talk about more in a little bit. EDR and being able to provide those protections through antivirus and anti-malware protection, live at the core functionality of MDE, or Microsoft Defender for Endpoint suites. And so with this capability, being able to turn on that cloud-based protection and allows that management to happen within the cloud, also allows you to take that data, that sensor data that's coming off of that machine, that's also fueling threat and vulnerability management, allows you to do proactive hunting, allows you to go in and look at any breaches, or be able to even take some KQL and create custom detections where those queries are running in the background and they're notifying you if there's any sort of issue. So those are some core functionalities that live in MDE. And if you want to take that further, let's say you have a custom query, or you see a threat on a machine, by activating capabilities such as live response, what that allows you to do is start a live response session on a workstation. Really, this is more like a remote CLI. So instead of you or someone within your IT organization having to call an end user and potentially get on a compromised machine, go start a Teams call and a remote desktop sharing, this allows you to connect to that machine through almost like a PowerShell session, run some native commands. If you see bad executables running, you can actually stop those and clean the machine without even having to involve the user. In a worst case scenario, that's when you reach out to the end user and say, yeah, we've done everything that we can to try to mitigate this machine. We need to have you shut it down or replace it, which are things that you can even do. You can cut off network connectivity to everything but Microsoft's command and control through these portals as well, if you see that a machine has been compromised and you're not able to remediate them. So that's part of that cloud connectivity that MDE provides. And those capabilities actually have been extended to Mac and Linux, so you can manage more operating systems within your fleet. So those are core functionalities. Second is the threat and vulnerability management. This allows you to take a look at all of the risk within your environment and determine, based on your score, based on best practices, what actions you can take as an IT organization to improve your security posture. Microsoft even provides you some guided steps with some of these. If, let's say, some of the recommendations are around improving some things within attack surface reduction capabilities that live natively within Windows, Microsoft will usually provide you some guidance on how to do that, whether it's through group policy, the registry, through ConfigMan, or even through Intune. They provide you some of those capabilities. If it starts to then venture into, let's say, applications, it'll provide you some of that recommendations as well, in terms of being able to look at those apps or firmware on machines, or maybe even some browser extensions. Those are capabilities that live now as part of that vulnerability management add-on, which if you're an E5, full E5 customer, those are provided to you, and you can turn those on natively within the Defender toolset and be able to leverage the data that's coming off of your machines to determine, where there may be potential risk outside of Windows configuration, outside of the applications on your machine, and then start to look at the machines themselves, look at your firmware, look at browser extensions. Even allows you now to be able to check your entire fleet against security framework baselines to be able to determine if you can meet CIS compliance or other SOC compliances. Those are built-in assessment frameworks that now live inside of the security portal, that just based on that threat and vulnerability management data that's coming off of your machines, allow you to activate one of those baselines, and usually within a short amount of time, able to look and see where there might be potential risks within your organization if you're managing them against some of those security frameworks. So this is a new functionality that has been improved and added to Defender within the last, I'd say, half a year. And it's getting a lot of popularity with customers, especially the browser plugins. You'd be surprised, what information that unfolds for customers, and how they're able to leverage things like Intune and policies to be able to manage Chrome and Edge to lock down or even remove some of those browser plugins. And then taking it past that and looking at some of the other native functionality within MDE, we look at the native anti-malware tools. And there's actually a lot that really runs underneath of the hood for that built-in Defender or Windows Defender antivirus service that you can enable, being able to look at, the cloud to determine if the metadata that lives in a specific executable is good. And a lot of that uses machine learning to determine if a file is suspicious. It's taking those samples and sending them up to the Defender Cloud Service for detonation and analysis. It's leveraging things like tamper protection and block at first sight, where if an executable, after it has sent it to the cloud, hasn't seen it before, it's going to block it. And then leveraging that cloud service and leveraging a lot of the other customers that Microsoft has that's also using the Defender service, able to determine if that executable should stay blocked based on heuristics, looking at some of the machine learning and some of the analysis of that file to determine if it's a threat without it being executed. So a lot of that is happening in the background as applications are open. It's looking at your behaviors, all of that happens and is being leveraging AI on your machine as well as in the cloud. Emergency signature updates. So, in some cases, I've got customers that, as part of their rollout of MDE, we were pushing for, definitions to be checked like every couple of hours. I think the native defaults are 8, but, some companies that we work with, they turn it down, and being able to have those signature updates come frequently can help if there's any sort of 0 days. But a lot of the capabilities that live inside of the Defender antivirus are helping to protect you even in the event that one of those do occur. And that's where then leveraging tools like the EDR and block mode provides that extra level of defense, where you're unable to really turn off those services without some sort of brute force. The attack surface reduction rules for having that intelligent behavior that's already built into Windows to provide protection. And then the indicators of compromise. So that's allowing you, and we'll talk about this in a few moments, you can build your own allow lists and block lists of executables, IP addresses, even certificates. If you wanted to block a specific certificate thumbprint across your fleet, you could put that in one centralized location and be able to manage those. So we're only halfway through the core functionality of Defender. There's still a lot more capabilities that it does as an EDR over and above what we've already covered. We mentioned the attack surface reduction rules and those being built into Windows and having multiple ways to deploy them. Over on the far left, let's say, I do have customers that are making their move into Intune as a systems management platform, but still want to leverage attack surface reduction rules. Those can be easily configured by way of a GPO to roll out, as you're making your way into a cloud-based systems management tool like Intune. And you can also manage those inside of System Center. I've got a lot of customers that are, again, they're on that same journey from a systems management perspective, but they also have been configuring customers for a long time, and they want to turn on these rules. So being able to create those policies are very easy and straightforward as well. But again, the easiest way, and also probably one of the more up-to-date ways of doing it, is going to be through Intune. Microsoft's updating the attack surface reduction rules profile as those functionalities are being introduced into the different Windows builds, being able to turn them on easily and actually have some definition around which each of those does outside of the Microsoft Learn article. It's built right into Intune. So those capabilities live natively there as well. On top of attack surface reduction rules, we have the automated investigations, where it leverages, looking at the executables, what's being open, some of the algorithms, and being able to take action immediately. If you look at the very bottom right, you can see there's different automation levels that exist as part of that automated investigation to determine if it can automatically remediate certain files. Otherwise, in some cases, then it sends an alert up to the Defender portal where you can go through, initiate that investigation. And it actually even gives you a really cool breakdown of what's been analyzed if an automated investigation has occurred. The different analyzed entities, those can be things from files, IP addresses to registry keys. You can actually even download the package that it will create as part of that investigation down to your machine and crack it open and take a look at it if you wanted to see what all Defender scans. This has probably been one of the more popular features with customers as I've talked with them about third-party tool sets that they look at to be able to determine its capabilities. And most of them have told me they have not seen anything like this in other third-party tool sets. So there's a lot of power behind those investigation packages that happen automatically. And then even over and above that, there's the threat hunting service, which is still fairly new. I'd say over the last year and a half or so, being able to have things like targeted attack notifications to let you know if there's any threats that have occurred or been targeted to machines within your environment. And then the experts on demand, where if you have that additional service turned on as part of your EA, you can send the services, you can send some of that information up to Microsoft and they'll help you manage those as well. So we've talked about the native Defender capabilities, the EDR capabilities that live inside of Defender. What does Defender do? And this is really at the heart of this conversation. That's really more than malware. What makes Defender different than the third parties that you can purchase and buy? What makes Defender for Endpoint unique? A lot of it, if we start to look under the hood, as I mentioned, it's built into Windows. A lot of this has been in Windows 10 and Windows 11. These capabilities are here underneath the hood. And you can kind of see if you've ever looked inside of Task Manager and you're wondering, what are these executables? I know I see some Sense executables. I can see the MSMP ones and MS Sense. This is really a very high level in terms of what executables you'll see and what they do on the machines. So for example, the data collection that is looking when you onboard Defender, if you have the feature turned on by default, which it is for standard network discovery, as you start to onboard machines into Defender, it's going to look out on the network, and it's like the old IP scan application is the one that comes to mind. It's going out there and kind of doing a scan of its local network to see if there's machines that live on the same domain as it, and we'll send that information up to the Defender portal to say this can be onboarded. I can deploy through Intune or SCCM or GPO to onboard those machines into Defender. A lot of that happens through that Sense EDR process. You also have Sense CE, which we'll talk about in a little bit too, that also fuels a lot of the data loss protection classification. The Sense IR, you might see that every now and then, but that is part of the automated response. So that does those live response sessions. You'll see those if those are initiated. If it sees a threat on a machine, the automated investigation, you might see that executable pop up as well. And then a couple of the other ones here, the main executable for Defender is that Sense XE, and then the MSMP engine is really that Defender antivirus, which still lives at its core for all of the local antivirus capabilities, whereas things like Sense are the ones that are more cloud-based. And then as we start to look at other processes, the proxy, if you have machines that are in a isolated environment, be able to have that communications module. We've seen some customers that leverage that. The monitoring host and the health service here at the bottom, those are ones that if you're using the more modern onboarding package, or even if you're managing machines that are older than Windows 10, those are some services that run as part of that data that feeds the monitoring agent that sends all that data up to log analytics into the cloud. So this is one piece of the Defender story which makes it unique, that most of this is already built into Windows. It's really just a matter of lighting it up through configurations, through policies, and being able to have that capability. I see here's a question from Neil. When you have connections updates to eliminate issues, how long does it take for those to show up? Also related, MIM updates of a device from a non-compliant to compliant. MIM, I would say, is probably more around Intune, but when we start looking at updates from the service itself, so by default, a lot of that is set to 8 hours. As I mentioned, I've got customers that will set some of those policies to every 2 hours, so that way it's helping to send some of that telemetry data up to the cloud much sooner. So definitely two parts to that question, one being more of the default of the service communication at that 8 hours, and the other would be probably more around the compliant devices and how that data is fed into Endpoint Manager itself. Let me know if that answered your question in the chat. And then Tony asked about the autonomy process. This is really the whole breakdown. These are all the different autonomy. From what I've done some research and also working with customers, these really do break down a lot of the key executables that live as part of Defender. So all of these would be specifically as they all work together to be able to power Defender as itself. Hope that answers your question, Tony. Let me know in the chat. And as I mentioned, since a lot of this is built into Windows, leveraging things like attack surface reduction rules, firewall rules, policies, they all work together to provide protection. It's usually never as easy as let's just activate the Defender for Endpoint Service and it will go. And for a lot of cases, unless there is a very malicious threat to your machine, you're typically not going to see much more behavior. But really, to leverage that full Windows end-to-end story around zero trust and being able to protect that device, leverages a lot of those capabilities. So this is a good scenario that I usually like to walk through with customers. Well, let's say, hypothetically, you have a bad actor that connects to your machine. In this case, it's running Defender. What happens? So let's say the bad actor connects to the machine. They see Defenders on there. They're like, okay, well, I'm going to prevent any sort of outbound connectivity to this cloud-based service, and that's going to allow me to continue down my path of maliciousness as a bad actor. So they turn on that. They try to block those firewall rules, and then because of the anti-tamper protection capabilities, it's going to automatically prevent those firewall rules from being updated. And because of the close connection of the services like Sense UI, etc., being able to communicate with the Defender services, the antivirus picks up those changes, and then on that machine, you see a toast notification because someone was trying to tamper with the machine. Because that happens, it's going to query them and force them to run a restart. And then in the background, it's preventing that firewall change from happening. And it's also sending reporting capabilities up to the security portal that says, hey, there's suspicious activity on machine. It's going to let your IT team know that they need to take action or potentially not. As long as that person that's on the machine sees that notification and restarts the machine, that they can quickly remediate those, because then after a reboot, it's going to turn those rules back on. Everything's going to be functioning properly. But if you wanted to look at the Windows firewall itself on a machine, you would be able to see that Sense executable has prevented those capabilities as well. So as an end-to-end solution, it's not only leveraging the Defender capabilities, it's also leveraging that Defender for Endpoint executable, and it's still sending that reporting data up to your security portal, so that way you can monitor and watch that. From a SOC perspective, you're working with customers that have third-party SOCs. Usually in these circumstances, that might be where you initiate a live response session, you go in through the CLI, and then you see what other executables are running, and maybe you reboot the machine, give the end user a call, say, hey, did you see a pop-up? Did you click restart? If not, we need to do that right now to resolve this issue, and potentially look to see what other activities were occurring that even allowed that bad actor on the machine, or to determine why someone was trying to tamper with the firewall rules in the first place. And so this is where that end-to-end story really starts to have light and be able to see how these different pieces work and how that reporting capability really does connect to that Microsoft cloud. as we dig deeper, or have a better picture, I guess you should say, of what that Defender story looks like, architecturally, there's a lot of pieces that really go into Defender for Endpoint. It's more than malware protection. It's more than antivirus capability. As we start to look at the sensor data that's going up to the Microsoft cloud, it really is fueling a lot of the Defender security services. It's leveraging machine learning. It's looking at determining if it needs to use the auto IR and do detonations to determine if it is a malicious executable. It's leveraging things like the graph to store data and send data to potentially maybe even Endpoint Manager, or send it over to a third-party SIEM, or send it to Sentinel or some other ticketing system for alert capabilities. In some cases, that data may not even be really security in nature. It could be more along the lines of how we're leveraging the whole Microsoft 365 Defender story as a whole for things like Defender for Cloud Apps, or the Defender for Office 365, or even some of the Defender for Identity. This is data that's being fed back and forth between these services in that Microsoft cloud, and have some of those security integrations itself. So there's a lot that goes on under the hood that's always running by sending that sensor data up to the Microsoft cloud. And because of that speed of AI, is processing a lot of that information at real time in the cloud itself. So as we start to then peel back the layers of the capabilities of Defender and look at, the proactive approaches, we're talking a lot about threats. At the core, Defender for Endpoint really does help us look at security posture and how we can address weaknesses on our machine. At its core, outside of just being that antivirus tool set, looking at threat and vulnerability management holistically, even outside of the Microsoft tool sets, really aligning to zero trust in your security posture is where we want to take a holistic look at risks overall across our environment. Identity is a core one, but then as we start to look at our machines and look at where there may be weaknesses across endpoints, how do I fix those weaknesses? And then how do I take additional security actions or increase my security posture? That in itself is where a really good threat and vulnerability management tool set will help you be successful and limit your exposure from a security perspective. And Defender does that. It allows us to look at our inventory. It allows our IT teams to determine, did we remediate actions? It's doing its scans every day to determine, let's say we roll out a policy to 1,000 machines. What is that adoption rate? Or maybe we rolled out an updated version of an application, or maybe we leverage something as cool as proactive remediations inside of Endpoint Manager to remediate applications. One of my most recent ones that I've been working with a customer on is they still had some Silverlight in their environment. They still had some Flash in their environment. So these are things that the threat and vulnerability management will see and tell you, hey, this is a potential weakness, and by eliminating those reduces that score to be able to protect your environment. And so this is a snapshot from a customer environment that I've been working with, and when we were able to show them this data after they had gone through and made that transition from a third-party AV tool set. They didn't have a TVM tool. This was really eye-opening for them, and being able to see where there are those weaknesses. And I told them, if you did nothing but went into threat and vulnerability management and spend most of your efforts in the items that have the highest weakness, that would significantly increase your posture, even over and above turning on all of the attack surface reduction rules or some of the other Microsoft security configuration items, which we'll look at here in a second. Targeting those top weaknesses should be the goal of any organization. In a lot of cases, it's older versions of applications. It could potentially be in your fleet that you have applications installed that you didn't know about. It could be updating the firmware on some of the models in your fleet because there's known vulnerabilities that have been exploited. So using this tool set, using this as a dashboard for SecOps teams to work hand in hand with endpoint management teams really does work, for best of both worlds, because it's increasing security posture and it's helping your endpoints stay more modern and more current. And so, as you can see, as we talked with customers about outdated applications and outdated firmwares, we also start to look at, do we have attack surface reduction rules activated? With this particular customer, they're still very new to Defender for Endpoint, and trying to quantify what the impact is of turning on attack surface reduction rules is still very much in flight. But at least having it in audit mode, we can then look at other reports before we start to turn on those capabilities. But all of those are here and can be leveraged and realized just by looking at the threat and vulnerability management dashboard. And one of the most recent ones, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, that I've seen be wildly popular in the last 6 months is really the browser capabilities and being able to look at browser extensions. And that's helped the endpoint management teams look at, what are some of those plugins that potentially are high risk, and you can see them by critical. And usually because they're critical, it's because of the number of permissions that those plugins leverage. Some plugins only, or browser extensions only really leverage maybe, let's say, 2 or 3 different permissions vectors within a browser. I've seen some leverage up in the ballparks of 20 and 30 different permissions. Some of them I've seen where the plugins will try to leverage or get access to the clipboard and local files. And I'm like, whoa, okay, those are definitely plugins that you want to be mindful of. And that overall reporting dashboard of browser plugins inside of your environment are ones that will help you see, just by the number of different permissions that it allows, are ones that you probably want to take and identify sooner rather than later. And those are the conversations that I'm typically having with customers. And so, over and above threats, in typical SecOps workflows, security teams, they're monitoring the security dashboard, and then they're working with endpoint management teams. And so if a particular remediation is needed, let's say we need to update an application or firmware, we can leverage the security portal to send a remediation request over to the endpoint management dashboard. And as you can see here at the bottom, there is a concept of security tasks that your endpoint management teams can see. They can go in there, they can use that as kind of their punch list for deploying new versions of applications through Endpoint Manager, or creating new configuration policies, or leveraging things like proactive remediations to eliminate the posture of those endpoints. And then as it's doing its analysis every day, it's going to feed that information back up to the security portal to make the SecOps teams happy to see that that weakness score of the organization is going down, because that's ultimately what you want, is the lowest weakness score as possible through threat and vulnerability management. And so over and above EDR, the threat and vulnerability management is a big component of Defender for Endpoint. And all this is built into Windows, and it sends all that data up to the security portal to be able to leverage. On top of being able to look at threat and vulnerability management, components like indicators of compromise. In this case, it could potentially be a malicious application, or it could be a legitimate application. I've seen customers take legitimate applications that they don't want it running in their computer fleet. They'll look inside of the security portal to get the file hash, and then they'll come in here and they'll that's one way of blocking an executable. They can do it by having some of those hashes. Because you've got that Defender service running on your machines, you're also able to leverage it to be able to block things like certain URLs or certain IP addresses. And those indicators of compromise leverage Defender and that communication up to the cloud services for you to almost use it as kind of like almost a web filter in some senses, over and above what the Defender for Cloud App Store, which we'll talk about in a minute, can also do too. In this case, what you have on the screen is that ability to also use some of the very lightweight web filtering that's built into the Defender for Endpoint toolset in the cloud as well. And so almost back to Sue's question of how does Defender work if you have other third parties, web browsers? So that's where network protection kind of comes into play. So to be able to leverage indicators of compromise, you have to enable network protection in Windows. Inside of Edge, it gives you that nice red browser background. It tells you that it's blocked. But in other browsers like Chrome, Firefox, and I think it gives you just like a generic 403 error message to let you know that that website, can't be loaded. So, you get the best experience if you are using Edge within your environment, but it does work with third parties as well. Same thing with, if you're looking at things like Zoom, that would be more of an application, which we'll talk about in a minute. It's a great question because that kind of that leads us into the conversation around sanctioned and unsanctioned applications and allows us to look at threats there as well. But under the hood, really, it is managing those indicators, and it's populating those sometimes manually by your IT teams. But then if you're leveraging tools like Defender for Cloud Apps to also manage threats, we can manage those within another portal or another pane of glass within the Microsoft security tool sets. I wanted to show this as an example of what happens when a third-party browser tries to access one of those indicators that's on the block list. You'll be able to see inside of the security timeline for that device that it tried to connect to a custom indicator and that particular indicator was blocked. And you can actually even see timestamps, kind of lists what that website URL was. It has that network connection filter. And even though it is Chrome, it's going to block that one as well. So having that visibility from a timeline perspective, you can see where machines or users are connecting to some of those and determine if some sort of targeted campaign or communication needs to go to certain people or the whole of the organization to let them know, hey, these are part of our acceptable use policy, and because of that, these particular sites are blocked. Some may be more malicious than others, and that's where having those indicators really do come into play for management. But as we start to look at the greater Microsoft story when it comes to threats, looking at applications as part of one of those pillars of Zero Trust and being able to ensure that you have a good posture when it comes to apps, ones that you know about and ones that you don't know about, really is where a CASB or Cloud Access Security Broker comes into play to be able to safeguard the use of applications. Traditionally, you'd have things like a Zscaler or even going further back, a lot of web-based filters would require you to be on premise or have an always-on VPN that does tunneling back to your organization, so that way traffic can be managed through an appliance. Or even in some cases, some third parties, they would have agents on machines that allow you to operate and be able to detect those capabilities without having VPN access. Great thing about Defender is that's also baked in under the hood, and it's really taking a lot of that log file data that is coming off of the machine and helping us understand where we might have users accessing certain applications that from the Defender for Cloud Apps portal could be high-risk applications. And the reason they're high risk is almost similar to the browser extensions. They allow too much access, but in this case, it's because websites aren't compliant. They don't adhere to certain security compliances that websites that have higher scores would be able to provide. And so that's why they would be ranked low, is because they don't have any governance around the information you give them. Maybe they sell your data. Microsoft has a massive database of tens of thousands of web applications that they're tracking, that they see in the wild, and they look at the permissions. So that's a safeguard in looking at applications that lives built into the Defender engine that's sending that data up into the cloud. And so being able to leverage a tool like Defender for Cloud Apps, part of that same Defender suite allows us to see where there may be potentially bad applications. We can see the number of transactions that occur between some of those high-risk applications. And then let's say that we see one that we want to block, and we can do that very easily within the Defender for Cloud Apps portal simply by calling an application unsanctioned. By clicking that little circle makes it unsanctioned, and by having the integration between Defender for Endpoint and application enforced access, it's going to create an indicator inside of the Defender portal. So then once that has been processed and someone goes to access a website, this is essentially what they see. They see a content is blocked message inside of their Edge browser, but then if they're in Chrome, they're going to see just a generic message. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to actually, I probably should have put one in here since for Chrome. So give me a second. I'm going to drop it in real time if I can get to the right window, and I'm going to show you what that looks like for Chrome. Let's see. There we go. So if you're on a third-party browser, essentially it's just going to give you a generic 403 error message. It's not going to give you the rich content that you would see inside of the Edge browser. You just see that access to the website is denied. And all that happens within the Defender for Endpoint services on the machine. So a lot of this is running in the background. Great question from Jason, saying drinking from the fire hose. Yes, that's just my MO. So I love to provide data and content. I understand that a lot of it will be disseminated later. Happy to share this deck with everyone afterwards. And like you said, a lot of people underestimate some of those capabilities, and appreciate the kind feedback. But yeah, there's a lot of components that live inside of the Defender suite. We've talked about the EDR capabilities. We talked about the threat capabilities. Now we talked about being able to leverage it as a CASB, but there's more. What if we wanted to talk about risks that happen within the organization, and a lot of the capabilities that live inside of the security and compliance suite as part of M365? More as we talk to customers and the customers have E5, they're like, well, we're using Defender for Endpoint. We've got a great EDR. We're doing things like indicators, and we're blocking bad websites, and we're using threat and vulnerability management. What could we be doing more to look at our risk profiles and being able to look at the data that comes off of not only M365, but also that Defender engine that powers your security and threat management can also take it to the next step and help you manage risks on machines as well. And look at things like data loss prevention, information protection, and governance that's built into the Defender service. We can now go into the compliance portal within M365 and have it take that same sensor data that we're feeding up to the security portal. It shares that data with the compliance portal and then allows us to take action on certain activities. Maybe we have certain personas or users within our organization that we don't want them to copy any sort of sensitive data to a clipboard, or be able to move sensitive data to flash drives or network drives, or print that data or transfer it through Bluetooth or RDP. All of that, traditionally, you'd be looking at third-party applications. We have customers that use those third-party applications, and they've been waiting for the Microsoft toolset to mature to where Defender and that data that's fed to it can really leverage DLP capabilities and enforce data loss prevention. So no matter if that machine lives in an office or is halfway around the world connected to an internet connection, it allows us to control where that sensitivity data goes. It allows us to control what browsers it can even go into, or what file paths are allowed within certain operating systems. We can define allowed or unallowed Bluetooth apps or domains, or printer groups. We can say certain individuals, they can print to certain printers if they have sensitive information, or maybe we want to say, hey, certain types of USB flash drives can be used. All that is leveraging that Defender engine to watch how that data is transmitted, and then even being able to extend that outside of the Windows environment and being able to leverage that through things like DLP policies on Macs and the native capabilities inside of Windows 10. All of those are triggered by way of a lot of that data that occurs. So being able to leverage Defender for Endpoint to provide that protection capabilities, not only on our Windows machines, but if you've got Defender for Endpoint on a Mac and you want to provide your content on Macs as well, we can leverage that as well from a protection perspective. So whether it's data that's being moved or transmitted through the cloud through M365 or pulled from OneDrive to a USB, Defender at its core is helping to enforce data loss prevention policies that live on your machine and all of the other places that data could potentially live within M365, and allows us to take that data as well and determine what is a user risk and being able to help build out risk profiles. And this is all part of the E5 suite as well, to be able to look at data theft. The policies that we just looked at to be able to provide protection around sensitive data also allows us to help and determine if user risky behavior is occurring by way of users trying to download large amounts of data from SharePoint onto their computer to be able to exfiltrate it to other browsers and upload it to third-party storage providers, to USB drives, etc. So that same Defender engine is looking at activities on your machine. And as you can see here over on the right-hand side, we talked about those indicators. All of that data is being fed along with the activity from a user inside of the graph in M365, and on an endpoint is helping to feed user risk scores and to determine if any sort of malicious activity or is happening even within your organization by targeted theft, etc. So all this data is the sensory data that's coming off your machine and being stored in the Microsoft Cloud, can be leveraged a multitude of different ways to protect applications, to look at user risk, to be able to look at sensitive data. All that is what Defender can do that helps it be more than just an EDR tool. It provides so much more capabilities. And so as we look at Defender and we size it up to other third-party tools, and we're going to look at a few of those here now, and ones that we run across in different customer environments, looking at some of the features. There's a number of features. So CrowdStrike's a popular one. Carbon Black is too. I will say that Carbon Black's probably the most replaced EDR that we see in customers today, because of the ease of being able to deploy it and remove it centrally, and just because of the cost point that we see with customers that are using the full E5 suite, or maybe they're using M365, they've got E3, but then they bolt on that E5 security. It provides a lot of those capabilities to be able to really stand toe-to-toe with a third-party tool set where they can tout that they have next-gen antivirus, which is not built into Windows. It's another agent that has to be deployed and installed and not just activated. You see they have threat intelligence, USB control, firewall control, EDR, threat hunting, hygiene, integrated security services. Very similar to what we've kind of looked at within Defender over the last half an hour or so. We can see that those capabilities are very similar in the elite version of CrowdStrike. Same thing with another one that we see kind of stand toe-to-toe is Rapid7. Not a whole lot of customers I see use Rapid7 for their any sort of data protection, but they do use it for machine assessments. They use it as a TVM. A lot of customers have it deployed in their data centers to look at the security baselines for their servers. And we do see a lot of customers that over the last couple of years, they've been rolling out Defender in their data centers. And I think the biggest thing that's fueled some of those deployments, not only from having an EDR tool, but offsetting a third-party tool like Rapid7 to where they don't have to have another agent installed to be able to look at vulnerability assessment or be able to look at some of the data that comes off of Rapid7 to be able to provide from a compliance or auditing perspective. So those are two that we walk up against. As I mentioned, Carbon Black's another one that it replaced thousands upon thousands of machines of EDR going from Carbon Black over to Defender. Some customers, they look at it, their security a little more, I wouldn't say holistically, but probably more from a network perspective. We have customers that, Cisco really drives their organization. And so you have a massive amount of Cisco hardware in an environment. A lot of it is network driven. And so Cisco has their tool set, which they call SecureX, which they kind of tout as being similar to Defender as kind of freemium licensing for that particular tool set. But the caveat is you have to have all of these features licensed. You have to have the hardware. You have to have it purchased. And for anyone that's worked with Cisco for a long time, that they're definitely on the top end when it comes to pricing in the environment. And from what I've seen of the SecureX platform, it's still very immature. It's still very young, and it does require you to have all these components and tap into all of these products to be able to tell a similar story that Defender does, to be able to have kind of an endpoint protection story, or be able to look at data protection, or be able to secure a firewall, lock a machine down, or have secure access. A lot of these capabilities I see within customers that within a simplified tool set like Defender, you can eliminate and look at it more at that software layer versus necessarily from a network hardware perspective. So these are the ones that I've walked in with customers with over the last couple of years and have had conversations with that really do come up a lot. And then that's where really starting to tell that story of Defender, and really, as Microsoft, as an industry leader that targets identities and endpoints and apps, how all that comes in with their complete suite of products to be able to provide zero trust at its core. Looking at places like Gartner, you can see how Microsoft has over the last 3 and 4 years have been up in the Magic Quadrant for endpoint protection platforms, and provides that unified SecOps experience, from Gartner's words themselves. And then from Forrester, they also have Microsoft listed as a leader in their Forrester wave to be able to provide, that clear picture of both endpoint information and signals. And as you can see here, they touch on identity, cloud apps, and email. So it's not just endpoint protection, it's so much more, and allows customers to really streamline and strengthen their security posture. And in some cases, I've worked with customers and been able to really help them replace 5, 10 plus products within their organization and really streamline it into one single tool set to be able to provide them with that end-to-end security. And as you can see here, there's a number of different pieces working behind the scenes for that data that comes not only from endpoints, but also data that comes in from Defender and identity, and Defender for cloud and cloud apps as well, that provides some of those capabilities. I know we're running short on time. I'm not going to go too deep in terms of a lot of the price and licensing and whatnot, but I did want to call out, this is a very common play that we see with customers that have E3 today. They want to offset some of those disparate tool sets, and so they do look at that E5 security as a bolt-on. And then from a pricing perspective, kind of looking at third parties, these are just a few of the ones that I've seen in the environment, or in customers' environment, that they're paying per machine, and they have 4 or 5 different tool sets that are on their machines that could potentially be replaced with just that one single tool set, and then eliminate things like third-party CASBs, really reduced to endpoint protection or email protection or endpoint protection there as well. And so, these are just a couple of examples of, in the last month, even myself personally, working with organizations that are based around the globe as they made their move from Carbon Blacks, Rapid7s, other third-party products, Cisco, etc., and moved to Defender. That's just continued to ramp up and increase as customers are looking at this story. Really, it's, we can save money over these disparate products, have one cost for security, and be able to have one particular tool set to provide those security capabilities and help us on that journey into zero trust. And so really that is where a lot of this story happens foundationally. It's helping to reduce security fatigue and costs and be able to do more with less, and be able to really ensure that tool sets are aligning to those 6 pillars of zero trust. We worked with multitudes of Fortune 1000 companies, and being able to take them down that journey tactfully is very critical. It's not just turning on an EDR, it's how does that impact Windows? How should we be leveraging attack surface reduction rules? How should we be leveraging policies in Intune? How should we be leveraging some of these other capabilities that we looked at for risk management and threat management? And would love to talk to anyone here on the call if they're interested to kind of understand this story more. If you're starting on that journey, if you've got questions, I'll post this deck to the user group. Michelle will make sure to get that sent out to everyone, but feel free to reach out and email myself or Michael to continue that conversation. You can scan the QR code in the presentation as well, and you use the contact form on the Concurrency website. But we'd love to sit down and kind of talk to you about what that customized blueprint looks like within your organization. And appreciate the opportunity. Michelle has posted the survey in the group. We are getting close to 3 o'clock. Definitely would love your feedback.